right, perfect. Now begin a call to order the special meeting of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee. We'll start with a roll call. Alderwoman Tierney.
Present.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Present.
And of course, myself is here. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, and the first business before the committee, I'm not sure if anybody is from. I don't see them.
From February 18th, the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped that part. Can approving the minutes from the regular meeting, our last meeting, which was 2/18/20. Can I get a motion to do so?
I move that we approve the minutes from 2/18/20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the next item on the agenda was an update from the police department, which was just supposed to be a general update on what's taken place since the last unfortunate shooting, and what new measures have been put in place to kind of assist with that. But I guess we'll come back to that once someone gets online or if they respond to the invite. Next item on the agenda, Melissa, if you'd like to just kind of give a brief introduction of HACA's new public safety coordinator.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting us. We recently hired our new public community safety manager. His name is Carlos Kelly. He comes to us from Philadelphia and has worked in a variety of capacities, law enforcement, with housing authorities. So he has a depth of experience in working with communities, and we're glad to have him on board. And he just started with us about March 12th, right after it was declared an emergency. So I said he gets a lot of good practice to get thrown right in the middle of a pandemic. So we're glad to have him, and he brings a lot of great ideas, and we've already started putting some things in place that he has suggested.
And is he on the line, correct?
Yes, he is.
Are you okay with him just sharing a couple of quick thoughts or maybe introducing himself to the rest of the team?
Sure. Carlos?
Alderman Gay.
Yes,
Alderman Gay, just want to indicate to you, I did forward the invitation to the police, fire, and Office of Emergency Management, just to let them know about the about the Housing and Human Welfare Committee meeting today.
Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
All right, let's try this again. Modern technology.
Hey, Carlos, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for joining us.
That's my pleasure. So,
yeah, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll just piggyback off of what Melissa said. So I have about 25 years of law enforcement experience. I've worked just about every job there is to do. I've worked as a patrolman, as a sergeant, a community relations sergeant, lieutenant commander, and the chief of police. That was my last position before I came here to HACA. Only thing I haven't done is deputy chief. So with that being said, I'm happy to be here. The issues and challenges at HACA is no different than other housing authorities around the nation. So a few things that we're trying to put in place right now is, I'll give you just a short list. So when I first got here, we revitalized our Violence Against Women's Act. We actually got it up and running. We put actual protocols in place. So if we do have anyone who is a victim of domestic violence, stalking, dating violence, sexual assault, we'll be able to relocate them along with getting them services that they may need from existing support groups that's in the Maryland and Annapolis area. The second thing that I've done is I've actually put together an emergency management plan. This emergency management plan is a living, breathing document, and it will be changed as we go along. And it has to do with evacuations, also where do we go for services and resources that we may need, who's in charge of what. Of course, the city of Annapolis would ultimately be the person in charge. But being a housing authority, we do have some resources and supplies here that may be utilized in case of emergency. Our facilities department, our supplies, things of that sort. And we also have a list of people to contact in case of emergency. And that goes from the utility companies to the emergency management office and things of that sort. We were in the process of, well, we are now putting it together. We got bids from several different security companies. We identified a security company that we're going to bring in, and they're going to supplement Annapolis Police Department as far as just being eyes and ears on the ground in our developments, giving them a helping hand as far as safety, of course, customer service, community policing, just so we can have more people out there seeing what's going on to make sure that everyone is safe, from the residents to the visitors, vendors, and anyone that happens to come on Hacker property. Also included in that safety plan, we're also putting together some things from a different perspective. I got some feedback from some resident leaders, things that they feel as though is needed. And we've actually addressed some of their concerns in our safety plan. And I'm compiling a list of things from the actual people, the staff that work for the Housing Authority also. So that'll be a separate component to our safety plan, because right here, right now, with the increase of violence, we want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our residents first. But that is also an ongoing process. The safety plan is put in two parts. And again, it's a living, breathing document, also like the emergency management plan. So we have some things that we're implementing immediately, and then we have some things that we want to implement over a time span. And that's other things as far as like quality of life issues that we want to get addressed, social service issues that we'd like to get addressed, and things of that sort. So that's going to be long-term, not just the immediate things that we're doing right now.
Thanks for that. I just have a quick question, and then anyone else who has any questions or response. With the third-party security, excuse me, can I?
Bless you.
With the thank you. With the third-party security be split between all the properties or housed on one specific property?
So that's a great question. So what we're doing is we're going to have them stationary at two particular sites, but they are going to have duties to rotate from site to site, check in, make sure that they're not just stationary in one place. And again, this is a temporary situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to contract them for 3 months. And during that 3-month period, we're going to do an evidence-based, assessment to make sure that this is what we need. And if it's not what we need, Melissa and I have talked about some other options that we may have to take. But again, safety is our #1 priority. So we're going to try them on a 3-month basis, and hopefully we'll know one way or another after 3 months.
Sheila?
I'd like to quickly add, by the time that 3-month period is up, we hope to have our police substations up. We are designating units to be able to be utilized as substations. So that's, of course, in coordination with APD and their coordination and ability. So they are willing to coordinate with us. So we hope to have those substations, one at Harbor House community, Eastport, and another at Robinwood.
Sheila, then Ross.
Thank you. And Mr. Kelly, welcome to Annapolis.
Hi, Ms. Sheila.
2 questions. The first was about the substation. You know, we have a proposal in our proposed budget to fund the substation. So how do you feel, Mr. Kelly, about having a substation within, and Miss Maddox Evans, I don't know whether it's for 1 or 2 that's being proposed, but Mr. Kelly, how do you respond to that?
Okay, so you want to know how I feel professionally or personally?
Both.
Both.
Okay, well, professionally, I'm going to say that I believe that is a good thing. Having a substation within the housing authority will have a police presence here. Also, like most housing authorities around the nation, they actually have substations within the housing authorities, and that's where the officers show up at work. They get changed there, they park their vehicles there, things of that sort. So professionally, I think it's a great idea. Personally, I think that one of the operations portion of it has to be that you have officers that are assigned directly to each development. There's nothing like being familiar with the people that you're working for and working with. So if Annapolis Police Department can commit to having their staffing actually designated for where they're working at, I think personally that's a great idea. If not, it's going to just be kind of like a revolving door, and people are not going to really take interest in what they're doing. It's going to be just, you know, another assignment, so to speak.
Thank you for that. And I trust that you're working with Chief Jackson to try to satisfy your concerns about that. And my second point, I am thrilled that you have an emergency preparedness plan. And I trust that you either have or will, and you can see Alderman Arnett smiling at me, that you have or will be working with Director Simmons, who is our master of emergency preparedness.
Yes. This COVID-19 has really, you know, turned things upside down. But he's definitely on the list of the people that I want to meet and sit down and talk to. Logistical wise, in the emergency management realm, everybody has to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. And although with the incident command system, we all get taught the same things, but each and every place you go, do things just a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And again, welcome.
Thank you.
Ross.
So, Mr. Kelly, very much welcome aboard. We hope we can do things to keep you here for many, many, many years. I have to tell you, we've done that 3-month trial before, and it was a great success. One of the things that the company we used before went out of their way to do was to try to befriend all of the young kids in the various communities. It got to be great fun. They would show up with their outfits on, their camo and their sidearm and so forth. And it really, really made a big difference. And it's too bad that that experiment ended. I would say to my colleagues on the council, we've got to do everything we can. And I certainly would commit to it to figure out ways that we can help make this more than a 3-month trial. It really was very good. Sheila, you remember it, Rhonda, too. It was just a great success. And I thought it was a community builder. And I thought it was a thing that gave the community 2 signals. One, we got your back. We have people here that are going to be looking, in addition to the police, that are going to be looking after you. And 2, we care about you. This is where we realize that your security, your safety within the housing community is just as important as the safety of everybody else in the rest of the community. And so I just think this is fabulous, both that you're here and also that you're immediately embarking on all the programs you initiated, but especially this program to do a trial with security. I think the last company also had 4 people, and they managed to be located in different parts of the housing community at different times, nothing scheduled, so it was sort of without notice, but they really were a roaring success. So I hope we can find another good company like that, and I wish you great success on that program.
Well, thank you.
Alderman Cheney, I'll come to you, but really quickly, just before we move forward, I just wanted to point out, I wouldn't be so fast for the positive praise. I'm not sure what security program you're referencing. It may have been one that I'm not sure, but I believe the last one we had was terminated early based off of misconduct of the officers. So that brings me to my bigger concern is what will we do moving forward so that we don't create a police state? Would you be satisfied with either the police subdivision or the security? Because to have both, to me, is just a bit much. And then also in regards to the placement, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Melissa, because we had individual conversations as a council with thinking that it would be better placed in the community center as opposed to taking off a unit with the current waiting list being up to 2,500 people. So I guess, Carlos, that would at the end of this 3-month trial, if successful, if there are no issues, do you see moving forward permanently with the independent security, or would the subsidized policing the subsidized police station route be better?
Well, we've discussed many different options, and it all depends what you consider to be success. So right now there has been an increase in violence, but to me, success is making sure that the residents are safe and they feel safe. So you can't really measure that unless you're out there talking to people and you're getting feedback. So we've talked about many different options. We've talked about the substation. We've talked about actually hiring off-duty Annapolis Police Department officers to come in on their days off and work. We've talked about trying to get our own police department as far as working for the Housing Authority. We've talked about a variety of issues. So at the end of the 3-month period, and I'm going to be honest with you, I would love your feedback and you to weigh in. We're going to sit down at the table and we're going to discuss what has been going right, what has been going wrong, and what we could do better. And if the security is something that can meet our needs and make sure that everyone is safe, then we'll continue. If not, then we're going to have to go in a different direction. What that direction may be, to be honest with you, I really don't know. We just have to wait and see. But as far as getting something in place as soon as possible, that is the best route for us to go.
So our overall goal with regards to improving our security services is actually to improve our community policing and public safety for our residents. So that's the overall goal. So the mediums that we're using and that we're trying is in furtherance of that goal. So we're going to be, as Carlos stated, collecting information with regards to what's working, because what we would like is consistent protection for our residents from sources that they can trust and that they build actual relationships with. And because, I mean, that's really what helps improve the overall security measures, because in most instances, to be honest, many people know what's going on the properties. They know who's doing what. The information is there. It's just building that relationship with our residents so they feel that they could communicate and share what's really going on so we can actually help them and not live in any type of situation where they feel fearful either from perpetrators or from law enforcement. And so as we're doing this in a manner in which we're evaluating as we go, so we can see, we don't think there's going to be one answer. We think there will probably be a combination hybrid of solutions to be able to approach this issue.
Well, I think that's why I found it critical that the police chief be present for this conversation, because what we continue to see is where HACA may get to a point where you understand what direction you'd like to go in, but there are, just difference in opinions from the police station or vice versa. So I think that just joining together in conversation and making, one decision is important, because as you see it later, we'll talk about Resolution R3020. That shifts even the form of policing to a more, mental health-based, focused approach to it. So we, within bringing police, security, all into these areas, and also trying to change the forms of policing, I just like that we're all on the same page. Alderwoman Tierney, and then Alderwoman Pindell-Charles.
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome. This addresses, I think, what my colleagues have asked. Right now, we have a resolution pending on stating that police violence, brutality is a health issue, and I'd just like to have your opinion of that, and also how much, as what Melissa said, how much, like, when you wake up in the morning, what is your day like? Are you doing outreach now to the communities, or are you just, in the office and trying to orchestrate all of this? So the first one is sort of a philosophical question, and the second one is just sort of a structural question.
Okay, so let's start with the philosophical question. Could you ask me that again, please?
We have a resolution drafted claiming that police violence and to disadvantage communities is an economic health issue. It's a crisis, and as we can see with everyone speaking out after the death of George Floyd, but just wanted to know your opinion about police and police brutality, and the, I don't want to get into racism, but just.
Well, I'm going to say this. I've had a 25-year career, and I've seen a lot of things. When it comes to police brutality, when it comes to mistreating of citizens in a jurisdiction, I'm a firm believer that it starts from the head of the organization. If the chief and his command staff are clear in the direction they want to go, if they are clear in their policy and procedures, if they are clear in discipline, 9 times out of 10, that type of behavior will stop. The problem comes in when you get rid of the branches of the tree, but unfortunately, the roots are still there. So how do you get rid of the roots? Again, policy and procedure. And I hate to say it, but, good old fashioned leaning on bad cops and making them leave. They making them go. As far as it being a health issue or crisis, I really believe that depends on the jurisdiction in which they're policing. And not only that, the philosophy of that particular police department. There's 2 things that I've learned in my career about police. Police don't like the way things are, and they don't like change. So with that being said, we're really at a tipping point in law enforcement. Prior to taking this job, I had a long, extensive conversation with Chief Armstrong.
Did you know that about the people being dismissed?
Excuse me?
I think everyone has to be on mute.
So prior to taking this position here, I had a long conversation with Chief Armstrong out in Ferguson. And it's been 4 years and he still has not come to completed his consent decree. And it's expensive. They're knocking him over the head for almost $300,000 a year for not being in compliance. But, you know, in order to get in compliance, those officers who could leave left, and those who can't leave, you're stuck with them. So it's an ongoing process. And if the head of the organization has clear policy and procedures and a clear philosophy, it'll definitely trickle down.
Thank you. And so the other question was really, how's the reach out going to all of the communities?
Well, I have a meeting scheduled for later this week to talk about that.
Okay.
There's a couple things going on. We have COVID-19 going on, number one. Number two, along with that, I've been out for almost about a week. I actually had to get tested myself. So my doctor said I wasn't allowed to come to work. So that put me a little bit behind. So later in the week, I'm going to sit down with Melissa and also my direct report, and we're going to talk about some things that we can do immediately as far as outreach. Other than that, I've been to the senior building. I've been talking to the seniors about social distancing. I've talked to some of the residents within HACA about social distancing. But, you know, it's just difficult. I'll just put it that way. It's hard to reach people when it's nice outside and they want to hang with each other and things of that sort. But I have been doing some outreach.
Yeah, it's sort of unfortunate timing. Well, welcome again, and thank you very much for your answer.
You're welcome.
Charles.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. First of all, Mr. Chief Kelly, we welcome you to Annapolis. Glad you're here. Where were you, Chief? What jurisdiction?
I was chief of police at the Great Grambling State University. In Louisiana. Yes.
HBCU.
Yes.
All right.
Hey.
All right. Very good. Very good. I'm the public safety chair for the council, so I work closely with police, fire, and the Office of Emergency Management. I just want to let you all know I got a text. They're on a conference call currently with the mayor. So Chief Jackson and or Deputy Chief Herman should be on in a couple of minutes, hopefully. And I'm sure in time before this call ceases, this meeting ceases. But anyway, thank you so much. I'm so far very impressed, not only with your resume, but what you've said today. I'm a retired prosecutor in Baltimore City, and so I have a great respect for what you do. I train police officers at the academy. So what you're saying regarding what we're seeing now all over the country is quite disturbing. But then on the flip side, we all know that there's anger there that's been festering for over 400 years. But anyway, welcome here. Anything that I can do, of course, with COVID going on, normally I would have popped over and met you, but I think most of us are kind of hunkered down to a large degree, but so glad you're here, and feel free to reach out to me at any time. We've got some great questions. We got a great council, but excellent mayor and staff, so thank you so much again.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you again very much. We all look forward to working with you and just being a part of this. I invite you guys, please, to stay and discuss the resolution if you'd like with us. But thank you for joining this portion of the conversation.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is for the committee to discuss R3020, which is youth violence for the purpose of declaring youth violence a public health epidemic and supporting the establishment of a citywide trauma-informed and educational response method. And so we had an opportunity to briefly discuss it at our last council meeting, first reader, but we didn't really have a chance to dive into it. So I wanted to go over and take any questions from my colleagues that they may have on the particular legislation. Just give me 1 second to pull that back up. All right. So basically, I put this together by using Representative Frank's from Missouri's outline legislation and resolution after the unrest in the communities in Ferguson, Missouri. And what I really appreciated about the approach is that when we talk about youth violence in our communities, in particular, it usually happens on the same communities. The approach is often just arrest or just some form of interaction with the criminal justice system that doesn't really serve to reintroduce them into the community once they are brought back home, give them the skills necessary to cope with many of the things that they've seen or had to deal with. And I think this kind of lays that out. And also, as Alderwomen Pinnell Charles mentioned at the last meeting, I'm open to any amendments to kind of give it some teeth. But what I'd really like to happen, if passed at the end of this amendment, is for us to look at some of the vacancies within the police department and their hiring. I think we're up scheduled for 122 officers, but we're like 116 or 15. But what I'd like is to go through a phase where we're able to introduce, therapists, mental health therapists, to help and respond to a number of these crimes in the communities in a more effective and hands-on approach than what we currently have through the joint partnership with the county, I believe, in crisis response. But this is, actual city employees who would, keep files on some of the interactions that they have with families, be more consistent in their approaches with, how can we help with, if you just seen your best friend be shot in the head and you are now just having to deal with the reality of that. Or if you've seen it twice over the course of a year, and you aren't really sure how to handle that or cope with that. And believe it or not, the mental health pressures from PTSD or just depression or anxiety really plays a large role in just you being able to operate in everyday life. So I think that it's important that we start to put a focus there. If we look at the number of the last couple of shootings in our community, all of them have been between the ages of 16 and 18. Looking at the Capital Gazette newspaper, that just like, he looked like he was a baby, basically, the 16-year-old who was charged in the double shooting a couple of weeks ago. And just trying to understand at 16, what does that do to him? What does that do to his family even? And how can we put him in a better position to, just come out on the other side of this? So I'm again open to opinions on how we can amend this legislation to make it more effective. But I do think it's time that we get to a place where we just have a different approach to policing in the communities. Ross? Yeah, speaker, sorry. But we still can't hear you.
Go off. There we go. All right. So I was enthused about this resolution until I got to the now therefore, and like that old TV ad, where's the beef kind of thing. I really wanted to see and would be happy to offer some ideas for an amendment to the therefore that is much more proactive. When I was reading this, I thought about our Office of Community Caring Services. We do have the crisis intervention from the county. I don't know how effective that is. I would imagine, we're getting some services from them, but I don't know what priority we get since we're the city, not the county. But I think there has to be something more proactive than just say we're aware of this kind of trauma. I know proactive usually means dollars. So if that's what it means, that's what we've got to do. But I'd like to see us do something, get some consultant in to pay a consultant some kind of money to give us an analysis of directions or something we can take, or get in our own kind of social worker, counselor. You know, I know this budget with all this pressure on the constant yield is looking like it's not headed for happy times, but still, we got to do more than just wring our hands and lament that this is going on. We've got to really, in the resolution of the council, have some more concrete action. So I've thrown out a couple of ideas, but I would just urge that we think about making this more assertive, more proactive. Do a study. I mean, I know that's a typical government response, get in an expert, but still, that could lead towards giving us some direction. How do other people do this? What are other communities doing to take care of their people in these trauma situations? So that's my comment, and by the way, commitment to support this resolution.
Thank you. Alderman Rodriguez.
Thanks, and thank you, Alderman Gay, for bringing this forward. We wholeheartedly support it, and it's especially timely now. And I support Ross's comments as well, because I've been reading some reports of jurisdictions, like your idea, Dawn, about including mental health therapists, social workers, counselors, even accompanying police in their responses helps de-escalate situations instead of what we're seeing today across the nation of militarization and kind of use of force, excessive use of force, where they actually escalate situations instead of de-escalate. So in many of the types of responses, including additional social worker support as part of a police engagement, I think is critical. So great idea. And if a study or commitment is the first step, then we can do it now. I think let's put the money where it needs to go. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Alderman Tierney, and then Alderwoman Rhonda Charles.
Thank you. And bear with me because I haven't done Zoom on my phone before, so I'm all over the place here. To my colleague Alderman Arnett's point, and also to what Alderman Rodriguez said, this is very timely. And this morning, I was just trying to call it up here. The American Medical Association, actually, they said on Friday, but it was released this morning, a joint statement. May I read it, if you mind? Okay. Yeah, American Medical Association policy recognizes that physical or verbal violence between law enforcement officers and the public, particularly among Black and Brown communities, where these incidents are more prevalent and pervasive, is a critical determinant of health and supports research into the public health consequences of these violent interactions. And it goes on to say that this is in their mind, a health crisis. So that is, we could add that to the resolution and stuff, references like that. And I just want to say thank you. And I think I am a sponsor and I do support it.
Thanks. Alderman Charles.
Thank you. I think we had an issue a couple of years ago when we wanted to determine something to be a health crisis. I think there was some state restriction, but it conjured up some other either resources that we were needed, but it was some hindrance, some challenge when it came to designating a health crisis in the city of Annapolis. But put that aside. I know we do. I'm sorry. What did you say, Alderman Gay?
If we had a city attorney on that, follow up with that.
Now, this was before, of course, before Mr. Lyles came on board.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, but I'm sure he would know about it. Anyway, the other thing is too, I know for a couple of years, we've had a contract with crisis response. I don't know what the data is as far as when they respond, who they respond to. Is there a report? There may be something we need to follow up, because if they are doing what we expect them to do, then that may be a resource, that may be a financial outlay that we might not have to have since we already have it. But we do need to find out exactly what the deal is with that. I do know Lieutenant Thomas, who's works with the director, had a health crisis of his own recently. In fact, he had COVID and was pretty dire and hospitalized. So I don't know what the situation is with crisis response with Jan Corbin as the director at this point. I do think, from what I gather, Lieutenant Thomas is on the mend. But anyway, that's something we might want to get a report on. So that's two things.
And I think, yeah, I agree with that. I think that when we actually use them and they're called to the scene of a crime, crisis response can be very effective. But again, I think what would really be helpful if I could get the help of you guys to put together an amendment in this is that only goes a certain amount of time. You have to continue to follow up with them. The families would have to call, or the police department has to call them to the scene. And the families have to call back to keep in contact. And I think what we're missing is just that, someone to constantly have that job and that role to assist these families, whether it be a 3 or 4 week period of just getting through, whether it be grief, trauma, anxiety, just whatever it may be, so that they can be productive on the outside of that. But I do agree that I would like to see that research as well. And I think Alderwoman Finlayson was next.
Thank you. And Alderman Arnett may be able to correct my numbers, but I think we contribute about $90,000 a year for the emergence for a person. They accompany our police officers, or at least when there is a tragedy such as a shooting. Now, they probably do not follow up days or weeks later. I think their response is the immediate response. But there's no question that we should be getting a report through public safety as to what they're doing and how they are supporting our families as well as our officers. But we are paying, and I think it may be more than the 90,000 now, but I know we are paying to support that effort, and it's in our budget for 21.
That's spot on. Ross, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I see you wanted to talk, but that is very true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know, Sheila. Your memory's better than mine on this one, but this is a place where we already have a vehicle then to throw some resources, and it could be an amendment to the budget. Again, I worry about where we're going to be on that just this coming Monday, but if there's already a conduit there that could do, like you're saying, Dewan, and have more follow-up, not just that initial contact, but more follow-up. A lot of times trauma doesn't show up immediately. Mm-hmm. And you really do need to have that contact so they can say, I thought it was okay, but now I realize I've got this issue or that. But anyway, we already have a lever to get in. I think we ought to try to take advantage of it.
Alderman Gay, Deputy Chief Herman just logged in. So if he can be brought into the conversation.
Julian, are you able to do that? Oh, thank you. Well, I guess we can just allow him to quickly give his thoughts, and unless you guys have any more questions or concerns on how we can move forward this amendment with those amendments, excuse me.
I'll send you an email, Dewan, with my thoughts. I'm sure there's better thoughts amongst this group, but I've got to sign off now. I've got KP duty.
Thanks for coming. So again, just after their update, I think we should be pretty good. Are they on?
Am I audible now?
Okay, perfect. We can hear you now. Yep. Can you hear us? I believe so. If you're able to, if you're on, Deputy Herman, would you just be able to give us any brief updates from the police department that you would find important at this time?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the meeting. We were on a conference call about tomorrow and the next day with the openings. We've been working, I guess the specific thing I would mention is right now we're working with the Newtown 20, the walkthroughs, to make sure that all those residences are secure. Is that a topic that you want to hear about?
Well, you could discuss that. Absolutely. We touched on that briefly.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We got reports that there were people stashing things in the houses, the vacant houses, probably kids playing, that kind of thing. So we've been doing walkthroughs with the management, the Harbor House management, to try to limit that until they do the demo.
And then we also just discussed R3020, which is a resolution declaring youth violence a public health epidemic. And I'm not sure if the police department has had a chance to look at it, but I would like to do so, prior to our before our June 8th meeting, just to also hear your concerns and to see if there were any possible amendments that you'd like to make, because I know that, it's one thing for the council to make this resolution and make this our, this is what we like to see from the police department, but it's another thing for it to kind of, be effective and carry out. So I'd definitely like to hear your guys' opinions on that at some point as well.
Excellent. Will do. Yes. It's youth violence specifically?
It is, youth violence, and the ages right now in the resolution are 15 through 18. Any more questions or concerns?
Alderman Gay, you're gonna have your regular monthly meeting as well, I take it.
Yes, yeah. Just to kind of catch back up on the resolution, yeah. With that, I believe we may have concluded the agenda. I just want to make sure. Yeah, that's everything. Alderman Fidel Charles.
Yeah, I just want to let Deputy Chief Herman know that we had discussed the role that crisis response team plays in the city and the contract that they have. When you get an opportunity, we're asking for a report. We're looking at the funding, if we can expand it, if we need to revise it, what we need to do. So you and Chief Jackson, please get together and give us some sort of update on crisis response. Is that plausible?
Yes, of course. So specifically, you want to talk about the level of service at the current level of funding, and then any specific recommendations we'd have as far as expanding it if there were funding available?
Exactly. And we can roll that into looking also at the resolution that Alderman Gay has proposed.
Okay, do you mind if I ask, right now we've detailed a sergeant to the county to help get ours up and running. Would you consider that would you be willing to consider a funding, that as a funding option to pay for the salary of another person in addition to the $100,000 we're giving now to the county?
Well yeah, that was I would love to get to that point where, we could take back that and use it in-house. And I do recall you guys mentioning that in the beginning, and the training process had begun. I know that my thoughts on that, if possible, I'd like that to see. I don't want to speak for all of my colleagues.
My thought is they have the real expertise with Jen and Lieutenant Thomas and the staff. I'm not sure how we would cut it or how we would do it, but I would definitely like that same level of expertise, no matter whether it's city funded or we do some kind of hybrid with the county. but they have a level of expertise that's undeniable, that's nationwide.
I agree.
Nationwide.
I agree. We detailed Sergeant Vaden for the purpose of having her do a workload analysis to see what it would take to bring it entirely in-house. And right at this point, it's her opinion that while we could bring a good deal of it, we would definitely have to have some kind of a hybrid with the county and leverage off of their infrastructure.
So, and I think that also, just jump into the resolution, the purpose of bringing in an outside therapist is that because if it's done by someone who's a police officer, there's still a police officer, and there's still that. As I guess is when you say bringing it in through the sergeants, would it be then them still as an officer bringing in outside or getting like certificates or training in how to interact or conduct therapy, or would it be someone who actually has a degree and specializes in that, then coming in a role as an officer?
Excellent question. That's precisely the rub right there. Is there certain things that the officers can do with proper training, but then it starts to get beyond their core competencies to the point where you actually need a trained clinician. Actually, to the point where there can actually be a conflict of interest between the officer's duties and a counselor's duties. So that's the whole thing that Sergeant Vaden's working out, is what portion can we have the officers doing. And the county's worked this out beautifully. So there's no point in reinventing the wheel. It's just a matter of what we would need to do the staffing in-house, and then probably use the county's counselors, and then what how that would look financially and that kind of thing.
Okay. I'd like to also maybe at our public safety meeting, if we have the opportunity. You said Sergeant Gates was working on that. I couldn't pick up the name.
Vaden.
Sergeant Vaden. Nikki Vaden.
V is in Victor, A-D-E-N.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, she's trained in the area, and she's obviously an excellent supervisor, but she's not a certified counselor. Primarily what she's doing is doing the workload analysis of figuring out how we would build out our own capacities. And as I say, it's been her finding so far consistently that we're going to have to build some sort of a hybrid system where we have some capacity in-house, but we're going to have to leverage off of the county's infrastructure. Because as I say, they've resolved a lot of these issues beautifully. And of course, they're better capitalized than we are.
I'll definitely again reach out to her and see if we have the progress there. Absolutely. Ellie,
I can put you in touch with her. She's excellent. She's an excellent resource to pick her brain.
Yeah. Would you do an introductory email?
Will do.
Thank you.
Was she involved in the Capitol murders aftermath? Was she major?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. She's been involved in critical incidents. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea if they have the expertise, as Major said, why reinvent the wheel? So I thank Alderwoman Pendle Charles for the idea.
And I know
it was. Okay. I know it was indicated recently that when they had the civil unrest in Baltimore City in 2015, they had some pretty antiquated things going on up there regarding trying to deal with that. And they called in our CRT team to get them all straightened out. So they're well known nationwide. So that's the kind of expertise we do have in our county.
And then just quickly, one last question. I see the city attorney, Mike Miles, is on. If you could speak to what that, Rhonda, you raised a concern, I guess, previously when introducing legislation, the effects of making it a public health. There was issues with that because it could have been a state.
Well, we have right now no public health infrastructure. So that's the only issue that I would have had, having a public health infrastructure first, or at least assigning it to a particular department to carry out. So as part of any legislation, we've got to always think about who's going to do it within the current structure. And right now, no one's assigned. The health officer, your health officer is given to us from the county through an MOU. And we have decided as a city not to take on that function.
So then would it be helpful at some point if I got with you two after speaking with the police department to kind of figure out how we can work that language into the amendment?
Sure. I mean, we can sit down anytime. Okay. I'll be in all week. We can social distance meeting, or we can have a telephone conference call. I prefer kind of face to face if we can work it out in my large office, I guess, and sit far away from each other, because I do want to get the details enough so that I can assign it to someone and get it done.
Okay, I'll definitely set that up then.
Mr. Lyles, if you could check with Carrie to find out what that specific issue was. There was some kind of rub when it came to the state. I don't recall what it was, but it kind of triggered more things than we had anticipated. So, but I don't remember exactly what it was.
I'll check with her.
Okay, thank you. Of course, all attorneys see things differently.
That's why we have them.
But I'm
Any more questions or concerns, anybody? Someone make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys very much for this.
Thank you, everyone.
Looking forward to the work. See you soon.
Thank you.